Welcome to another episode of In the Name of Service, a podcast committed to sharing the untold stories of those who selflessly serve. Each episode features an interview with men and women who have been called to a variety of service-focused roles, such as the military, law enforcement, ministry, volunteering, and more. You aren't likely to know the names of the individuals you meet here, but our hope is by the end of our time together, you'll not only know their stories, but possibly be inspired to write your own in some way. Humble in nature, but strong in character, these everyday men and women showcase what it is to truly be a servant. We're glad you're here. Now here's your host, Dr. Barb Thompson.
Thank you so much for joining me today for another inspiring episode of In the Name of Service. I'm your host, Dr. Barb Thompson. As a United States Army veteran and operational psychologist, I've spent the past 12 years working directly with military and law enforcement units, conducting in-depth interviews with hundreds of individuals who are hoping to earn their place on high-risk, high-performing teams. In most cases, they've already put in years of grueling physical and mental work just to get the chance to serve and sacrifice more. That type of selflessness is special, and I feel worthy of recognition. While each person's story is unique and every path to service different, their goals are similar: to do something more, to be part of something bigger, and to make a difference. These difference makers were the catalysts behind this podcast, and it's my privilege to share their stories with you. So today, I have the privilege of speaking with Christine Conley. Christine, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you will, you've got a very cool history, more than 12 years serving in the Navy and all kinds of neat organizations you've been a part of since your time as a quote unquote civilian. Take us through, your history and background and just tell us more about yourself.
Well, again, thank you for having me and thank you for what you're doing, because I think it's so, I used to discount the power of story. And it really has become more clear as time goes on, just the power of story and giving people that ability to connect with their own stories. So thank you for what you're doing. So I grew up in the Cleveland, Ohio area. I was the oldest of 4 girls. On the outside, my family life looked normal for the beginning years. As time went on, my mother suffered from a number of different mental illnesses, and that became more obvious as time went on. I went to about 5 different elementary schools. By the time that I hit 6th grade, we had been moved from school to school because Child Protective Services kept getting called due to, signs of abuse, of neglect. And so I'm not going to, completely give my age here, but back then we'll say if you said that you were homeschooling back then for religious reasons, then there wasn't really a whole lot of follow-up. So we were pulled out of school, said that we were homeschooling, and my mother actually sent me to work cleaning houses under the table. So that was pretty much my life from about 6th grade until about 17 years old, which is when I ran away. I was able to locate our father, and we were able to get my younger sisters out of that environment. Very traumatic upbringing, a lot of violence, a lot of upheaval, a lot of secrecy. And when I was 17 and was able to get out of that environment, I was able to get my sisters out of that environment. Then it was, okay, now what? Because I had lived so much of my life at that, complete just survival.
Right.
Mode. How to assess, how to not, provoke violence or, protect my sisters. And I did have I was carrying a lot of guilt for not being able to protect my sisters. So I had that, already instilled that wanting to protect others, wanting to, also make up for not being able to protect them. I actually worked in the music business for about a decade. I got out and I was looking just to be able to do what I could to not deal with my childhood. I wanted to have nothing to do with that. That did not define me. I wasn't going to deal with it. Now I'm out. And what am I going to do now? So I started off just as a stagehand, ended up doing, concert lighting, and then lived more or less, on and off the road, doing concert lighting, did some tour management for about a decade. And that was the perfect environment for me to not have to deal with, with my past. It was like literally, live hard, live fast, live loud.
Always something new, always a different city. Yeah, just on the go.
Completely. And it was like that perfect environment for me to just, not going to deal with any of that stuff. It was great. And then 9/11 happened. And I realized that that kind of lifestyle was probably not sustainable in the for the long term. And it really impacted me because I started to ask those questions, what is the purpose of my life? What am I doing? So I'd always been interested in the medical field. I went to the recruiter's office. I had some contact with a few military folks and veterans, and honestly didn't know a whole lot about the military. I knew that I wanted to be a corpsman or work in the medical field in some, form or fashion. I didn't have a, college degree. When I ran away at 17, there wasn't that option to go back to high school because I had missed so much school. So I'd gotten my GED. Yeah. I went to the Navy recruiter, said, hey, I want to be a corpsman. They're like, yeah, no, we need males to go FMF, to go with the Marines. You're not doing that. But we have this great job that just opened up to, you can come in on entry and you're going to be working with dogs and, all the excitement. And I'm like, oh, perfect. And it ended up being Master at Arms. And, what do they say? Don't trust a recruiter, because the next thing you know, I'm standing on a gate checking IDs, and it was not what they told me.
Where are all the dogs?
What is happening? Like, I don't even know. But so that was how I ended up joining.
Wow. And did you have anyone guiding you in that process, or was it all self-guided, self-directed?
Oh, it was completely just, showing up and sure, that sounds good. That, there wasn't a whole lot of direction. And, I remember talking to the recruiter because, okay, you're going to be Master at Arms, you're going to do this. And they had offered me a few other things. And I told them with that wait time, I said, look, if you make me wait, I'm going to change my mind. So you either need to, get me into something or that's it.
See you later. Wow. Okay. Well, something about it worked, I think, because you served more than 12 years. Is that right?
Yes. So, going in pretty much blind.
Right.
I was 27 when I joined. So my experience was not that of a number of my peers that I was coming in with. I loved the structure. Mm-hmm. I loved that things were clearly spelled out. I knew that if I just showed up and I, did what I needed to do, that, there was advancement, there was, structure to a certain extent. And that's something that I had never really had in my life. I served in Washington State. That was my first duty station. And then went to Bahrain. And that's where I'd started working in investigations in Washington State. And what was really interesting was, and this is something that I'll touch on later, because, where I work now really focuses on that science of post-traumatic growth. Yeah. And I didn't know it at the time, but my proclivity towards investigations, I was really good at showing up to scenes and being able to see what was beneath the surface.
Right. Well, it's no wonder.
And I had no idea, show up at a, child neglect, child abuse, domestic violence, whatever it might be. And it was, long after the fact, but I realized that my ability to, follow cases and have that case solve rate was because I had spent my whole life watching and being able to study people, because if I was able to gauge, what was going to set my mother off,
right,
then I could, look for those signs that would circumnavigate that. So I had spent my whole life training for this. And I'm not saying, in any way saying that was a good or healthy way to grow up, but it was because of that gave me that ability to, see what was below, beneath the surface and thereby helping others in a way. So I did investigations, went to Bahrain, really worked in a lot of like human trafficking and some other fun stuff there. Went from there to, and I tell people, because people ask me, oh, you're Navy, you should know about Navy things. And I am not the right person to ask about the typical Navy experience, because I was assigned to one ship. I was assigned to the USS Carl Vinson, which is a aircraft carrier. And I was assigned there for 2 years, and never once did I float anywhere. I went on the ship a few times, but it was a dry dock in Newport News, and I had an office in an office building outside of the shipyard, and that was pretty much where my shipboard, quote unquote, time was spent.
Yeah.
So,
Looking back on it now, I just want to keep listening to wherever you're going, because I feel like you have about 1 million stories you could tell. But what now, several years post your military service, what stands out as having been your most meaningful experience during that period of time?
Oh, gosh, trying to narrow it down. So from the ship, I went to the schoolhouse. I did high-risk instruction. And from there, that's where I went for the Navy. We called it individual augmentee, going IA. And I went to Iraq and Afghanistan under that. I would say probably one of the most defining moments was probably in Afghanistan. And I don't want to say there was any particular one defining moment, but it was like that space and time. I was, I started off, I was attached to one of the SEAL teams. And then from there was pushed out to, it used to be called Firebase Cobra. It's in the National Geographic short, the Green Berets. And that's when I was attached to a ODA team. You really have to, it showed me how you really have to earn your place on those high performing teams. And it's not given. Nothing is given. And
how did you do that as an outsider?
Well, in Iraq, that was also under the SOTF, under the SEAL teams. And it was show up. You just show up, you work your butt off, and you observe. You don't just drop in and assume that you're going to be, accepted. You observe. And I think that goes for, you go travel, you go anywhere, you observe the culture, you see, what the environment is, and then you find out where you can provide value.
Right.
And, if where you'd be a good fit. And it was, again, in Afghanistan, I think that it became so clear that, when the stuff hits the fan, that it really is about the person on your left and your right. And I saw that, and the power of a small team and about communication and all those things that I was able to take and, use those lessons later on in life. And that, it was such I never, to that level of closeness, of cohesion, of teamwork, and being able to observe that. And then coming back. So 2011, I came back and from that deployment, and it ended up being my last deployment because I had sustained a number of injuries. And it was, now all of a sudden I'm getting surgeries. And that was when, for the first time in my life, I really just had to stop because I physically had to stop. Getting surgeries, I'm in a wheelchair, I'm doing all these things. And that was when, on the outside, I'm fine, everything is fine. But I was, looking for somebody else that had an experience like me, because I came back and I wasn't part of that team anymore. I was an individual augmentee. I was sent back, to the schoolhouse. Now I'm getting these surgeries. Nobody, has shared these experiences with me. All the folks that I had been with were in Washington State or down in North Carolina, and I'm in Virginia. And, I really also, learned to embrace, my gosh, what about the reservists or the National Guardsmen or all those folks that, are just activated for a short period of time and then have to go back and assimilate into.
Right, totally isolated from the
folks that have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, completely. Which also, even talking about transition. And so that is when I think I hit my rock bottom, was not knowing what was going on with me, trying to pretend that everything was fine during the day. And then at night I'd be Googling, looking for somebody else that had any kind of story or experience like me. And I didn't find it.
Yeah.
And that was, again, like just talking about the power of story. If I could have found, I think, just somebody that had some of those same experiences, I wouldn't have felt so alone.
Right.
And I think, that's just, that freight train that all of a sudden had to stop. And now I'm having to deal with all of my stuff to start from back in childhood, and all these, things that I compartmentalized so well, I thought was, all right, we're here, you've stopped, and you're going to deal with us now. And that petrified me. And so as I'm Googling and, just trying to figure out, who, what do you do in these circumstances? I don't know what's going on. I started drinking. Yeah. First it was, a glass of wine to, just, relax me so I could finally get some sleep, to, hey, this isn't working anymore. I'm just, I can't sleep, because I would lay down and then all the things were like, hey, we didn't go anywhere. As a matter of fact, we've gotten bigger and now you're going to deal with us. And I was like, oh no, I'm not. So, that turned to, to drinking, heavier. And I finally hit that rock bottom. I almost became a statistic. I had a plan of how to end my own life. And the only reason I didn't was because if I had done that, I would have left my daughter, who I had, she, unfortunately, her father and I divorced when she was 2. And so I'm the only parent in her life. And now she's, 7, 8, 9 years old during that period of, me figuring all this out. And if I would have done that, she would have had no one. And she had already been, sent to live with family and friends while I was deployed. And now I'm going to leave her like that. So that, I'm grateful for that, because I might not be here today if it was not for that. I knew that the Fleet and Family Service Center, they had people who helped. I got to that point where I knew that something needed to give. And so I literally just walked into that Fleet and Family Service Center. I went to the lady at the front desk. She's like, may I help you? I'm like, I need help. And I just completely broke down.
Right.
I had nothing left to, it was, I'd reached the end of my rope. And, they got me in back. Oh my gosh, we're having a crisis. Got me into the clinic, immediately, got me to see the psychiatrist. And I'm very grateful for that at that time, because as low as I was, I'm very grateful that, I was on medication, seeing the psychiatrist, seeing the therapist, and it definitely got me to where I was able to cope again. Yeah.
What do you think kept you from reaching out earlier?
I think shame, embarrassment. I had had a pretty successful career, made E6 in 5 years. Through just determination, grit, and hard work, I had a pretty successful career. And to admit that what I felt at the time was admitting weakness was probably one of my greatest fears. Like, I don't have the answers. I don't have it figured out. I need help. And I think I was just petrified even of saying I need help.
What would that mean? Yeah. Take you down an unknown path.
Yeah, because, and maybe it's also possible that because for so long I did not have control. And so to me, having control of things meant that, if I've planned, A, B, C, D, point 1, 2, 3, all the plans, then sure, I might have to, rebalance, but I'm going to be okay. Nothing is going to catch me completely off guard. And I think that I equated asking for help with letting go of all control. And that petrified me, because once I had regained what I thought was control, I didn't want to let it go.
So how did you end up turning it around? I mean, you mentioned that those services definitely helped to keep you afloat at that time.
Yes. So, and I think you said it beautifully just now. I was afloat. I wasn't drowning anymore, but still not a lot of direction. I found out, I was doing okay, but I was still getting all these surgeries. I was averaging about 1 or 2 surgeries a year. And I did not realize at the time, but I had sustained a number of traumatic brain injuries, TBIs. And, while the immediate concern, okay, so, I'm on the medications, I'm not a danger to myself anymore, not the mood swings and things like that. But what would be my new challenge is, I'd be driving to work, same, route that I'd taken forever. And all of a sudden I end up in North Carolina, and I'm like, how the heck did I get here? There's, a particular, intersection where, there's a couple of clover leaves in Virginia Beach getting onto the freeway. And, I've taken this for years. And then all of a sudden, if I'm not locked on using GPS, I'm circling a couple times, and I'm like, what the heck? And that scared the heck out of me. So I started trying to, to get that, figured out. Was finally able to get that answer. But it wasn't until it had already been determined, look, you're not getting any younger. You're still getting these surgeries. Unfortunately, it's going to be medical retirement. Yeah. So I was going through that process at the same time, and was actually able to get that figured out, where I had sustained a couple TBIs. I was lucky enough to be able to go to Walter Reed, to NICO, which is a fantastic program if you are still active duty, Intrepid Center of Excellence, and go through that program, which was fantastic. Very grateful for that, because it answered a lot of questions. And sometimes even just knowing the why is huge. So that was very helpful. And then it was, okay, now medical retirement. Now what?
Right. Yeah. Here you had this really successful career, like something you felt like you were in total control of, something you were naturally good at, promoted. Like all of that feels really, really good. And you found some teams that you gelled with more than other groups in your life. That's a lot to leave behind.
Yes. And, especially after having felt some of that before with, coming back from that last deployment and being separated from the team. Now it was complete, separation. What do I do now? For so long, the military had given me that structure, had given me that purpose, had given me those roots, if you will. And now what do I do? So right before I had gotten out, I had started looking at different nonprofits, different, ways of continuing to try to cope. And I started volunteering with those. So after I got out, went ahead, finished my degree, and was volunteering with all these different nonprofit organizations. Then I ended up working for a couple of them, and that provided me with a number, just that feeling of belonging again, feeling of purpose. Yeah. And I still struggled with taking care of myself. So because I had never really been taught on how to take care of myself and instead take care of others, I was, I wouldn't say I was ineffective, but as far as being sustainable and not feeling burnt out, I would throw everything into helping everybody else, because I didn't want somebody else to slip through the cracks like I felt like I had on a few occasions. So that became my new purpose, but I still hadn't figured out how to take care of myself.
Well, when did that come along, or is it still in progress? And how do you do that?
How do you take care of yourself? Is that the question?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've talked to several people who have had to learn that same concept, and it looks a little bit different for everyone. So you're in a position now where you're still like the whole purpose of the Boulder Crest Foundation is, again, you're in a helping role. And so it's not like that part of your life is going away. So how have you balanced that to be, I guess, to use your word, more effective?
So I was very lucky to have a friend that had given me a book called Struggle Well. We had gone through NICO together and, just gave me the book and said, oh my gosh, you need to read this. You need to read this. You need to read this. I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'll get to it. That and 50 other books that I want to read, thanks. But yeah, sure. I'll get to it. And kept asking me, hey, have you read the book? Have you read the book? I'm like, no, I haven't read the book. I'll get to it. I'll get to it. COVID happened. I actually got the book on Audible and listened to it. And that idea of post-traumatic growth, I kept on, rewinding it. Oh my gosh. This is all the work that I had been trying to do for so long, trying to figure out. And it kind of all came together in that funnel and was like, oh, this is it. Okay, I got this. So I ended up going through the Warrior Path program. PATH stands for Progressive and Alternative Training for Helping Heroes. And that was in 2020. And that is when I think I really started working on where I'm at today. Because, and just all the work that I've been trying to do, on myself, it was one of the most unselfish things that we can do is to take care of ourselves. Because when we are able, and whatever that looks like, but when we are able to take care of ourselves, we give ourselves that capacity to be able to sustainably and effectively be there for others. Me, pouring myself out. I'm going to help you. I'm going to do the things. Well, A, maybe some people don't want that. They need to figure out their own answers. And then B, if I'm, constantly running on fumes, what good am I? Because I'm going to be burnt out, continuously having this cycle. So one of the things that we do talk about during the program is, here's all these wellness practices, throughout your military career. Here's another tool for your toolbox. Here are these tools for your toolbox, which is great in some circumstances. But what do we do with tools? We pull them out when things are broken.
Right.
And then we put them back away. And these wellness practices are these things that, okay, this is these things that I know that I do for myself that give me that capacity, that increase, my bandwidth, so to speak, and give me that ability to sustainably and effectively be there for others because I'm filling up my own tank first.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your role and about the foundation. So
Boulder Crest Foundation is where I work. I'm the director of programs here in Virginia. And it started, Ken Falk is our founder. He is retired Navy EOD Master Chief. And his vision was, originally to provide that space for rest and reconnection, he and his wife, Julia, for members of the EOD community that after 9/11 were coming back, spending long periods of time at Walter Reed. So being able to, we're about an hour west of the DC area, right in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And it was to give that chance for, once stabilized, but for people to come out, get away from the hospital environment, because we know that, that's not always the best for, our mental health and our mental wellness is being in that, for months and sometimes years in that environment. So being able to get away, reconnect with the families outside of that kind of environment, beautiful, serene, rural setting. And, it morphed from there. So now, we started there in Virginia. We now have Boulder Crest, Arizona. We have a mobile training team, Alpha and Bravo. And then we have other partner organizations that already had their own nonprofit mission, but that have started to also offer the Warrior Path program, which is a 1-week program in person. We call it the initiation phase, but then it's a 90-day commitment. So it's not that catch and release. It is that, all right, you're here for a week because sometimes we need to get away from the noise of everyday life. When's the last time that you've been spent one day for yourself? just focusing on your wellness. So that gives them that opportunity to, have that space, focus on their wellness for 1 week, be part of a cohort, because that's something that we also say that we miss is that camaraderie, that team. And so the cohort that you go with, you're going through this 90-day journey, staying plugged in, holding each other accountable, supporting each other. But then you're also part of this larger network. We have people not only across the nation, but there's folks that are, in Australia, in, the UK that have gone through this program and are supporting each other, holding each other up and being there for each other. So it's a very organic community, and it's just fantastic. So we have the Warrior Path program. We also offer we still offer that rest and reconnection for families of combat veterans. We have a military teen retreat. We have songwriting with soldiers. We also offer Struggle Well program, which is more for it's a number of the things that we also talk about in Warrior Path, but it's more in like a conference type setting almost. And that is a great part for the first responder community. And it's a very exciting time because we are also, we're part of the Avalon Action Alliance. And in that network, we also have a number of TBI facilities, Marcus Institute for Brain Health, the SHARE initiative down at Shepherd Center. I think we have 7 TBI centers right now that we're part of in the network, and also substance use. So like Warrior's Heart down in Texas, Forge in the New England area. And it's all based on that holistic approach of taking care of the entire warrior. And then that idea of post-traumatic growth. We get fixated on that PTSD diagnosis, which is so limiting. PTG says, yes, trauma happened. 100%. And trauma doesn't care so much about specifics because trauma will rewire you. But we also know that, just looking at like neuroplasticity, those neurons that fire together, wire together. Well, if that's true, then that also means that, with that intentional approach, that we can also train to thrive. We don't have to just cope. We don't have to just survive. We can actually thrive. And that is a lot of what we, talk about when we're talking about those practices. These aren't the tools. These are practices, that thing that I'm going to do on a regular basis to take care of myself so that I can thrive. And that idea of post-traumatic growth is not just, I can survive, but post-traumatic growth says I cannot just survive, but I can thrive, and not in spite of what I've gone through, but actually because of it.
Yes. It is very exciting to hear about, I think, just that perspective. And it's all true, right? It's all based on science now that we know, right? That's also a lot to carry, though, just knowing that there may be more applicants than positions available in the treatment programs. And how do you, and having your own history as well, how do you stay motivated to continue to serve in this way?
So what I do differently now from when, before, where it was just pour out for everybody, take care of all the people, other people need all the things more than I do, is I think one of the key words is, being present and intentionality. Slow the heck down and paying attention to those things instead of compartmentalizing, being curious about what's going on, if I'm feeling, tired, or if I'm feeling, a little frayed around the edges, why is that? Instead of that means just go harder, do more things, make ignore the things. It's very much that, and also embracing the idea that I cannot take on someone else's burdens. It's not mine to carry. It's actually almost rude of me to assume that I can do that for you.
Yeah.
Because I don't know where you came from. I don't know your path. I don't know your journey. I don't know what got you up to this point. What I can do is I can listen, I can be present, and I can walk along beside you while you do your own work. And I can hold space for you. It's really that idea, you hear about, if you go and you see the cocoon and they're trying to get out. And if you actually try to help, that emerging butterfly or that, baby chick trying to get out of the egg, if you go and try to help it out of its struggle, you're actually weakening its system because it's not allowing that thing to take their strength from the struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so to just, take that concept and walk along beside these people. I say often, they're like, oh, thank you so much. You did this. And I said, well, you did the work. We just simply had space for you. And that's when honoring that, everybody has that capability to do their own work, to find their own answers. How can we best hold space for each other and support each other? Not so much taking on other people's things that we're not mine to take in the first place. And just very intentionally doing what I need to do to take care of myself. And, everybody's different. What fills my, tank, so to speak, isn't, going to, it's, for me, it's, meditation. It's a daily gratitude practice. It's getting out in nature. It's, those things that I know that I need to do for me.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I have two more questions. One is just if people are interested in learning more about the Boulder Crest Foundation and everything that you guys are doing to serve those kind of military, first responder, law enforcement populations, how can they find that information?
So we have the website, bouldercrest.org. We're active on Facebook. There is Boulder Crest Foundation. There's Boulder Crest, Virginia. There is, send us an email, call us, come out for, combat veterans can stay, free of charge for 2 to 7 days at our locations in Virginia and Arizona. Wow. Yeah. And it's that chance to get to, connect with your family. You can do as much or as little as you want. Come out and check us out. And what I would say, as a member of the Help Everybody Else, everybody needs this more than me club, but reforming, is I would strongly encourage people to check out the program themselves.
Yes.
To be able to, have that moment to take care of yourself so that you can sustainably and effectively be there for others, for this community, because this community does need your story. They do need to have you take care of yourself. Yeah. So
good advice. And the last question I have for you is also going to require some advice from you for other people. But let's say that someone listening to, your story has connected with it. They know that they want to serve in some way unique to themselves, but they're just unsure about how or where to get started. What would your advice be for them?
Reach out. So often we've lost so many people in this community. And, coming from someone who also considered that option, we are not meant to live in that isolation. And reaching out, and then just like I said, that idea of people sharing their stories. Is it uncomfortable sometimes? Absolutely. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who's willing to be honest, because you then give everyone else in the room permission to say me too and to share their stories. And so reaching out to others, because how many times do we hear other people say, oh, we had no idea they were struggling. And it's, after the fact, it's too late. We had no idea. I thought they were doing well, or we knew that something was wrong, but we didn't know how to help them. Ask those hard questions. Have these hard conversations, because sometimes, it's uncomfortable, but it shows that you care. And so reach, not only, if you are the one struggling, reach out to somebody, please, because we need you. Our community needs you. We need you. Don't let that, time of service be the last great thing we do. Use, that life experience, use that struggle so that we can help each other and be there for each other. But then also, if you notice someone struggling, reach out and have those hard conversations. How many times when, we're out of our comfort zone, or you might think, well, what can I do? Well, if you even just get that person to talk, they feel heard, they feel seen. And then from there, maybe you don't have all the answers, but then reach out. Sometimes it's not even that somebody needs answers. They just need somebody to sit with them and listen and know that they're not alone. So.
And I don't think it takes any qualifications to listen.
Brene, I love Brene Brown. And I'm going to, this isn't a direct quote, obviously, I'm definitely paraphrasing, but she asks, hey, have you ever experienced heartache? Have you ever experienced loss? Have you ever experienced, disappointment? Yes. It's part of the human experience. If the answer is yes, then you are uniquely qualified to sit with another human being and just be present and listen to them and support them.
I love that. Yes. You already have all the qualifications you need.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Christine. And is there anything else you want to leave us with before we conclude this conversation?
Thank you so much for what you are doing. Thank you for, the platform that you are, giving. Thank you for your service. And then thank you for giving that, continuing to serve by providing that platform for people to tell those stories, for us to, be able to connect with each other. And, thank you so much for your time and what you're doing.
Everybody, thank you for joining us for another incredible episode of In the Name of Service. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and subscribe. And of course, feel free to share with those you feel would like to be inspired. Have a difference maker in your life that you'd like to see featured? Reach out to Dr. Barb Thompson at inthenameofservice@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.